Welcome to the Red Letters Podcast. In this podcast, we explore topics that can be life-transforming while delivering a message of hope.
So welcome to this week's episode. Today we will be covering why do emotions drive behavior more than knowledge and facts. So welcome to Red Letters Podcast. I love this topic. I think I love every topic, but we're going to dive into this. And why is it that emotions do drive our behaviors more than knowledge and facts? I'm going to use an example here. So I had this tendency to just go off the deep end with my words, and they weren't really pretty words back in the day. And when I talk about this, I'm talking about 6-7 years ago, because I didn't know. I hadn't done a lot of reading by then, but I started reading this book. It's actually pretty good, and I highly recommend it. It's called the Bible, and it gives you a lot of information. It gives you facts and a lot of stuff. If you have lived a life that hasn't been a pampered life, and it hasn't been where you have had things handed to you, a life full of abuse, a life full of regrets, you tend to not believe what you read because it doesn't make any sense. So you tend to go on your emotions of what life has presented to you thus far. So for me, I was a screamer. I was a cusser. I would cuss. My first instinct was can you believe that? My first instinct was, if you're gonna say something to me, get in my face. We're probably gonna fight. I know. Yeah, I know. But when I started reading more, I started that I had the choice to decide how I wanted to react to anything or anyone, not based on my emotions, but based on facts, based on actual true knowledge. And what does that mean? So that means is, if I give in to somebody else because of my emotions, I am basically lowering my standards of who I am and who I believe to be because of my emotions and because someone, quote unquote, pissed me off. No, when I'm in charge and I can regulate me and I know who leads me, then I do not let myself be affected by anything anyone else does, anything outside of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Why do you think people, because I'm a victim of it many times too. Why do you think people run to their emotions as a route to accomplish or to get through a situation opposed to the facts that we're talking about?
I think because we're so used to it. It's something that has happened over time. Anger is something that happens to you. If you were little and you saw it was witnessed. You witnessed it all your life. So people become angry, and so they're reacting on their emotions. So it's ingrained. I believe it's something that it's pounded into you so much as a young age that you just operate with that emotion. But it's learning that this emotion is not healthy, which emotions are good. I believe emotions are good, but it's how we take them in and how we model that emotion, if you will.
I think a lot of times we run to our emotions and our feelings because, just like you said, it's something that's embedded to us, but it's quicker and easier, and it's our default because we don't want to learn a behavior and to collect the facts that we need to better our lives, to better handle our situations, to better handle our relationships. And I think by being intentional to gather that information to change is what's going to make your life better, so that you're not always the person that's functioning out of their emotions and their feelings, and nobody could ever, determine which Mary are they talking to, which Ida are they talking to, which Tony are they talking to. But once you could turn around and probably, I'll use that word, mature and grow, that's when you're crossing that bridge to turn around and gather the information to make you a better person, so that you could turn around and be more stable in your relationships and your family and your marriage, because you're getting those tools on your tool belt so that you could turn around and function in a better way.
Yes.
And I think that no matter what, it's going to require discipline. And I heard this thing just the other day where they say a lot of times people hate that word, or they think it's such a big chore. But this one guy that was talking about that, he had mentioned, why don't you turn around and look at the small disciplines you could add to your life?
Oh, yeah.
What are you not doing that you would like to do? And if you have to write them all down, do so. and start checking off the ones that you could start to do now. And as you do that, you'll end up being able to conquer some of these bigger disciplines to help you operate the way you're supposed to.
Right, exactly. That's so good. The one I also like this, Tony, that because it says, why do our emotions drive our behavior? So there's something that's going on that's driving that behavior, right? So we say, what you were talking about. So it's having to learn something different, having to unlearn something. So I'm going to talk for those people. I'm talking to those individuals listening who want change in their life, but they keep behaving the same way because they're driven by their emotions. So for me, the way it worked out was seeking therapy. And we mentioned it earlier in case you guys didn't listen, or if you want to go back and listen to our podcast that we had with our pastor. But it was surrounding yourself with different people because it's a different mindset. And what you want to do is give and absorb all that knowledge and all that information that this other individual has that has made them successful in life because they're not driven by their emotions. So to me, it's important to surround yourself with positive people, successful people. We're not perfect. People are not perfect out there. And I totally understand. And I get that and respect that, but it's like, how do you make yourself better from the person you were yesterday? And it's like not running on emotion. So I don't want to run on emotion. I want to run on facts. I want to run on what is true.
That's true. And I think that the feelings and emotion, we have to kind of keep in mind that that's normally something that comes from within us comes out.
Yes.
But when you get that knowledge and facts, those are normally outside information or resources that help build the inner you. So it's an outside way of helping the inner you. So that we're not just reacting with what we're feeling, but we actually kind of process it through our mind and say, okay, let's determine the outcome before I do the action.
Oh, that's so good. Think about it before you act on it. Yeah, that's so good.
And knowledge is something that you have to seek. It's not something that comes naturally.
Yeah.
Just like your emotions and your feelings, it's so easy to run off your emotions at that moment because it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easier than sitting down and taking the time to seek knowledge.
That is so good.
Yeah.
And emotions and feelings, normally those are spontaneous. A proper way to react to something, it's kind of understood and there's a path to get there. But when you're operating out of emotions and feelings, you're bouncing all over the wall. You're going, nobody could determine, even if you have kids, they're confused on, is mom or dad in a good mood today? When can I present something to them because I don't know which one I'm talking to. If they're in a good mood, a bad mood, they don't even have this ability if you're living off of your emotions and your feelings. Because I know some people that are in my family and friends that do that. And sometimes I can't turn around and process an issue with them because I know their reaction is going to come from that place of feeling and emotion. So sometimes when I need counsel, I have to go to somebody that you said maybe he's been there, done that, and got through it so that I could turn around and get the proper information to make those better decisions.
So true. Yeah, and all our emotions are provoked by a thought that we have. Well, I believe that. So you have a thought that causes a feeling that provokes an emotion.
Yeah.
And then if we don't realize or don't have awareness of how we're acting or how we're coming across to somebody else, we will continue to do that. And basically either turn a room dim or have it lit up because of our emotions. And some of us are very, what would you say? There's a way you present when you walk into a room that you can light up a room, or you can, everybody will just match your mood or your emotion, and everyone will get really sad or really down just because of how you are. So a lot of times it's checking yourself and why am I having these thoughts? What is happening, or what happened outside of me that provoked this thought that I'm functioning on this emotion that is either making me really really sad or really angry. So, yeah.
And I know right now we're sharing information, but maybe now we could go to some experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Because, Gio, my son, he's an audiovisual team here on the podcast. And I remember more than once where I've reacted out of feeling and emotion. And I've said something or done something. And I would look over at him right when I was done doing whatever I did. And he would just give me a look like, did you really need to do that? Did you really need to say that? He won't say a word, but just his face corrects you. And those times it makes you like rethink, do I really want to get that look again?
Yeah.
Do I want to, at the moment I felt like I was the child and he was the adult because I was reacting out of emotion.
Right.
So I think that, there's times that you're going to be confronted with how you react, how you use your emotions, but what are you going to do from that? There's that choice, whether you're going to continue living that way or you going to continue getting that look from a child or your spouse or whoever that gives you that look like, did you really have to do that?
Did it really have to go to that extreme?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think maturity will help you turn around and find the proper way of doing it. Because a lot of times I think people react out of emotions and frustration and feeling because they don't know how to articulate what they're going through or what their process is. And because they can't articulate that, they get frustrated on the inside, so they react.
So they react, yeah.
Yeah. So I think learning how to communicate is a big key to cross the bridge of, living a life through, emotions and feelings to where you could just be somebody that's solid, that people can actually gravitate to, that, hey, how did you become or how did you get to where you're at in life?
Right.
Because I have some of relatives that I know I can go talk to because rarely they properly handle their emotions where you can talk to them and, they'll cry and this and that, or, share their emotions, but they're in a good place where it's an overflow of the facts and the properly handling who they are and how they function. I'm not sure if I'm saying it the right way, but they're in a place where they're solid and sound in their choices. So when those emotions come out, they actually seem genuine because you're not seeing them all the time. You know what I mean? They're actually more authentic. I know, like, some people, they call it, like, I don't know what the exact term is, where somebody cries wolf, where they're turned around. Every time you talk to them, they have an emergency.
Yeah.
Just because that person chooses to live with it, just because it's their emergency, doesn't mean that I have to
Drop everything you're doing.
Yeah, because that's the life that they're choosing to live. They're riding that emotional roller coaster and they don't want to get off. They don't want to change. They don't want to mature. They don't want to grow up.
Yeah.
And we all have areas that we got to pay attention to and be intentional to turn around and not just sit in the passenger seat and let that emotion drive us where we're going through life. But I just think we need to really pay more attention to people, resources, like you said, books that can really help us to turn around and be that better person that we need to be.
That we need to be, exactly.
Would you say that, though, like our emotions and our feelings and all of that could be, it's a display of the matter of the heart, like what's going on in our heart? Because I think that because I think the emotions that we have is like what you said, Mary, earlier. It starts with a thought.
Yeah.
And I believe that too, when it becomes an emotion, it's a thought that you actually continue to play out in your mind. So you're continually feeling that. You're feeding those thoughts, basically.
Yeah.
So let's say if you're feeling sad or feeling angry, but then you're in your mindset, you're thinking, oh my gosh, well, that person made me angry. This is how I feel. And you're playing it out in your mind over and over again. I'm saying this because I've done it where when something upsets me or something, bothers me, my thoughts, if I don't take control of it at that moment, and see that, you know what, you're going to play this out and you're going to continue playing it out. And what happens, I become like, it starts like building up inside of me, like pressure, and if I don't deal with it at that moment, let's say, for example, actually, I'll use us as an example. Maybe there's something that my husband frustrated me about, or maybe we got, in an argument or something, right? And it wasn't dealt with at that moment. And I walk away from it, right? And I'm thinking, why did this happen? Why did that, why did you speak to me that way, or blah, 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 And all of a sudden everything may seem fine, but then when we come together, you'll say something and all of a sudden I'll just blow up like out of reaction because of what I had already been dealing with that I didn't deal with at that moment.
The thoughts that had kept going and going.
Kept going and
spiraled
going.
out of control.
Right. And I think it has to do too with sometimes the issues of your heart, doesn't it?
Yeah. I would think so, unless it's an isolated incident. I don't know, Ida, but that's what I think.
No, it's just a question. It was a
Oh,
thought.
yeah. So I would say yes and no, and like Pastor did earlier, yes and no, because I believe that for the most part, and I'll use myself for an example. As an example, for the most part, I try to be in control of the emotion and in control of even the thoughts, but sometimes things will happen where in that moment I will blurt out something I take back immediately, but it happens, and I don't know if that's from the conditioning that's how I was conditioned to react, whatnot. I don't know if it's that, but instantly I know that I take it back because I'm like, this is not the person that I want to be. This is really not the person that I want others to see, and it happens to me, and so I try not to make a lot of phone calls when it comes to certain businesses to get information from them or to get them to help me on something, because T-Mobile prides itself on saying that they're experts, but when you call them and they're not experts, I get really ticked off, and then I'll tell them, look, this is not personal towards you, to the individual that I'm talking to, but this situation is really messed up, and then I tend to like either hang up the phone or just walk away because I know that I'm about to lose it in that moment. So I believe that would be situational as opposed to, is that the way I operate all the time?
Yeah.
So-
And I think too, one of the to look at whether it's an issue of the heart, I think you could look at patterns. I think that patterns will dictate if it's a matter of the heart, because then you could turn around and see whether it was an isolated incident or is this just a pattern this person's choosing to live by. Because patterns say a whole lot. But I think that giving your emotions and giving your feelings as you empower them, I think is a choice of being lazy. Because if you're going to turn around and live your life that way, that means you're saying, you won't say this, but your actions are saying, I'm too lazy to work on this.
Right.
Because it's going to take effort for you to gather the material, gather the facts, gather truths
And apply
that can help you. Yeah, exactly. And apply it. Because if you don't apply it, it's pointless. That's why they say wisdom is knowledge applied. So.
Yeah. And you know what, Tony, since we were using examples of ourselves, so one of the things that I believe that also drives emotions is pride, because we fail to see it, or we don't want to see it. Even if we see that we're in the wrong, we fail to admit to it or admit to us, like, maybe I was wrong. I had the greatest lesson of my temper in an office setting. I'm a social worker, and I was in an office and I was having issues with a coworker. And there's 4 of us in this one office, or 5 of us at the time. This is a long, long time ago. But I had the greatest lesson there, because the same thing that you said you saw from your son, I saw it from a coworker. We were really, this coworker and I are really close. She happened to be in the office, and the other coworker that I didn't, we were having issues at the time. I was not a Christian. I didn't know anything. So she comes into the office. She had said something to me. I said something to her. She gets up, she walks out. She comes back in the office and continues to talk to me, but just the way you and I are talking to each other. But she was basically being real mean and rude, but in a calm voice. But my reaction was always, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to deal with it. Like, so I stood up and I started, pointing the finger and yelling and basically challenging her in the office, which of all things, my God, to stand up and, let's take care of this, because we're not going to keep talking about it. And she just looked at me and she said, you know what, Mary? And she turned around. She was still sitting down. She turns around and she leaves the office. And I sit down and I'm huffing and puffing, like, I can't believe she just did this. And I turned to my good friend, coworker. She was in the office. And she's giving me this look of disappointment and almost disgust. And I'm like, what? I was in the right. She just shook her head and she said, no, Mary, you were not. And I was like, but wait. I sat there and I started to relive my whole childhood. You get up, you defend yourself, you fight. And that's all I could think about. It's like, you should have got up and heard her at that moment. It's like, why am I thinking this? And it was in that moment that I was checked. And I could not handle what my coworker was doing to me, but I was flying on emotion, and I was flying on past experiences and what I believe to be the truth up to this point. So it was, it really taking that pride aside, like working on myself and saying, you can never, ever react like this again. It doesn't matter what happens. Don't ever. And that's what my coworker said. You realize that you looked so bad. She goes, you look like you're out of control. You don't have any control over your emotions. She said, and you came down to a level where you're actually crawling on the ground. And when she said this to me, I said, what? I thought you were my friend. She said, I am. And that's why I'm telling you this. Don't ever let anybody see you get to that point. Go get out of the room, go cry, go to your car, do whatever, but don't ever stand up and challenge, especially, we're women, especially another woman, and in a setting like this, you don't do that. So it was checking my pride. And since that moment, I've seen, when I see other people, now I see myself. I was like, you are being so ridiculous. Like, just sit down, don't do it, don't react to it. And usually it's a lot of young kids, and they'll have that same comeback. I'm not going to be a punk. I'm not going to be this. But if you saw yourself through other people's eyes, you actually are being a punk because you're flying on emotions that are so high, and that pride that you have, it just looks bad on people in general.
Yeah, it's almost like you're being a bully. In a sense, we don't see it that way,
right?
But you're trying to bully them.
Exactly.
But one thing I was thinking about when you were talking, there's a verse in the Bible that says, "Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." You know how much damage we create when we turn around and just choose to live off emotion.
Right.
There's probably relationship, if you're listening, there's probably relationship that you've severed because of your emotions.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's you could have had a better job opportunity if you could have managed your emotions. There's so many different things. And I even heard this before, and I think it's worth sharing. That I remember, I don't know who it was that told me this, but don't you ever make a major decision on emotion.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to make the right choice.
Exactly.
Gather your information once you calm down, once you get off your high horse, so that you could turn around and make a sound decision. Because 9 times out of 10, you make a major decision out of emotion, you're going to regret it. Exactly.
And that's it. Emotions of being excited or being really afraid.
Yeah.
You don't run on that emotion because it's short-term solution for a long-term. What is it?
Yeah.
Something. Yeah. It's going to be here for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ida, really quickly, I wanted to say something. You said that whenever you were feeling a certain way, that you felt something in your chest earlier. So this is something that I believe the listener really, 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 I'm talking to those people who are struggling with anger issues, who are struggling with any type of depression, any type of emotion that you could actually take a hold of, but we don't because of our pride. But if we don't do that, that's where stress starts to sit in. And when we get those emotions that are so strong, stress, mental health illness, some type of it's always a type of mental health issue that we start facing when we don't deal with our emotions properly, when we don't face what is going on and say, why am I reacting this way? So, and we get problems in our physical body. We say, well, why did this happen? Or why do I feel this pain in my neck or this pain in my back? It's because of how we're carrying whatever happened. And we hold on to that emotion, that anger, that fear, whatever it is. We hold on to it instead of releasing it the way it was meant to be, because our body is not equipped to carry that stuff. So once we decide to take it on and say, oh, well, I'm going to stay angry at that person, I'm going to, stay this way. Well, what happens is starts to manifest within the body, either physically or mentally. So for those listening out there, learn how to let go. You said earlier that you realize that you were letting the emotion, the thought just go over and over in your head that was causing that emotion. But when you realize that that's what was happening, you stopped it. You did something, obviously, to stop it and say, okay, enough with this. Like, I am allowing this to happen to me. So this is what we do, people. We allow a physical inability or a mental illness to sit in when we do not face those issues and let them go. So
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that in a sense, we're kind of looking at how negative emotions cause a lot of these problems, but there's a myth saying that you're weak if you don't feel emotions.
Right, yeah.
So to feel the emotion is not wrong.
No.
It's what you do with the emotion that's going to take you down the correct road or the right road or the wrong road. So just because you feel emotion, that's not a sign of weakness. It's what you do with it that's going to determine whether you're weak or you're strong enough to manage it in the correct way.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so good. It's learning how to manage it in the correct way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think going back to the scripture you brought up, because that's one verse I live by in James, slow to speak or quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. And I think a lot of emotions, they're really easy to fall into. Like anger, I think that's a reaction that just happens. And some people I hear get so bad where they black out and they don't remember.
Yeah, I've heard of
and
that.
I've never been that angry. But I think, like depression, stuff like that, like how Mom, you were saying about your thoughts and like the issues of heart, if you keep dwelling on it. And I think that's when you go into the emotions. But I think how you just said, what you do with your emotions, I've learned being slow to speak and quick to listen, and just those two phrases, it gives you almost like when you're the person that's always quiet and you're just listening, and then when you decide to speak, everyone stops talking like, oh, what does he want to say? Because your words have more weight.
Yeah, they're more potent.
More potent because they're almost like fermenting or what do you call it?
Marinating.
Marinating, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that verse, even if you just live by that, people with like anger issues, I feel like just be slow to speak, just breathe, because the emotions, they come up fast and you got to put them in check.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good.
Also, too, I think something that was triggered when Gio was talking was like, I think we had talked about before in another podcast, or maybe just in conversation, but like, and when you listen, don't just think of something you're going to say to follow up after they talk, but like actually listen. Like, isn't there like listening versus hearing or something like
Yeah,
that?
you're
yeah,
hearing
that's
but not listening.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people think they're doing what Gio's saying. Like, oh, I'm listening to everything they're saying. It's like, no, you're getting ready to like fire back.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
collecting ammunition so that way you can destroy the person afterwards.
Yeah.
You could say that's
Do you
mama.
know what I mean?
Because you're looking right at me, honey.
No, it's because you're in front of me. No, but it's true because
I do that a lot with her, and she knows it.
Oh,
Because I'm already thinking about what I'm going to say, or I'll cut her off, assuming that I know what she's going to say, and I'll say it, but it really bothers her because I'm not listening.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you're.
yeah, it
And
is
it's
a trigger.
true.
Yeah.
It's true.
But it shows
She's
too,
right.
like if someone loves you enough to actually hear what you're saying, that shows a lot too about the relationship.
Yeah.
Like if you care about that person enough and the relationship you've built, like as a parent or whatever, or like as a sibling, like if I don't take time to actually hear what Gio's saying, that just shows how little I want to respect you, but like that I care about you. You
Yeah.
know what I
Right.
mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that totally makes
listening
sense, yeah.
too, like you're saying, I think a filter you could use is when you're listening to someone, especially if they're going through something. One, are you sympathizing? Are you like kind of are you feeling for their situation? But when you empathize is when you actually put yourself in their shoes and try to feel what they're feeling. When you're listening to someone with that intent,
Yeah.
there's good fruit from that. And I think that's something good to always keep in mind, because like you're right, I don't know how many times certain things seemed like they were going in the wrong direction, but if you bite your tongue and just be patient, sometimes you realize, hey, I'm mad because somebody cut me off, but then look, if I would have been ahead 2 more seconds, I could have been in a car accident.
worse,
And then
yeah.
all of a sudden you're like, wow. But initially you got all mad and you told the person in front of you they're number one and all this other stuff because you got frustrated. But then you realize that there was a bigger picture at hand, but you're just looking at the now. You know what I mean? So,
And I think too, sometimes a way to show control is to be able to walk away without saying anything.
Oh, that is so good.
Do you know what I mean? Like I know one thing with you, Mom. Like we've had full on like hardcore debates, if you know what I mean.
ding, ding, go to your neutral corner.
And I'll literally like just not shut down, but I'll stop talking and I just walk away. And she takes it like, you're being disrespectful. I'm like, no, I don't want to say something out of anger or out of emotion. I want to actually think about how I'm feeling. And 9 times out of 10, I come back and I'm like, Mom, you're right. Truly. But it's like I had to take a step back and walk away without saying what I wanted to say in the moment. I guess you could say like my flesh. And I came back with wisdom rather than just like, I'm gonna
Well,
You know
I
what I
think,
mean?
you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, because actually I'm right here sitting and the word patient keeps coming to me, is to be patient.
Yeah.
And like you said, quick to hear, slow to speak, what the word says. And now that you're just listening to you, Ruth, right now, I'm thinking about the times, that we would argue and he would be the type that it's almost like he can just walk away out of the room because he's angry. And at that moment, I'm thinking, no, we're not finished.
Yeah.
We need to
Yeah.
settle this. We need to talk about it now. But he'll walk out, and then later on, he'll decide, okay, let's talk. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I don't want to talk now, because you know what? At the moment I was willing to talk, you don't want to talk. And so I feel like when she does that, I almost feel like, oh, here we go again. Now there's two of them that I, walk away
Yeah.
and I'm left by myself. And now it's like, and now that's where and the mind games and
Yeah.
the battles go
Yeah.
on in my mind, because I'm angry. And so all my emotions, all my feelings are just
Yeah.
increasing. They're boiling up, and to the point where I'm like, frustrated. And it's just learning to be patient,
Yeah.
stepping back, thinking about what you say before you say it, practicing listening. And I'm talking to myself right now, because like I was sharing with you earlier, Mary, I was telling her that I'm listening to this pastor, and he's talking about how your mind is the control tower,
Command tower.
and control tower
Yeah.
of everything that goes on in life. Whether you're sad, you're happy, it begins with the thought. Like you said earlier, everything's with the thought. What you do with the thought, at that moment, do you dwell on it? Do you take it? Do you run on it? But I guess is when that thought comes, ask yourself, where is that thought coming from? And actually, I want to share something. I wrote this down yesterday because I was having lunch with my grandson's mother, and she said something the other day, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write that down, because that was a good
Nugget.
nugget. Yeah. And it says, she goes, learning to differentiate what are your thoughts and what are not your thoughts, or your thoughts you adopted. Or
Oh,
the
that's
thoughts you
good. Yeah.
adopted. So it's learning to differentiate. I don't know if I said that word
yeah.
right.
That's right. Yeah.
What are your thoughts? So that thought you have at that moment, you ask yourself, is this a thought, that's gonna, help me? Is it something that's not, is it something that I adopted maybe from the past? Is it something that I
Right.
experienced in the past and now it's coming up again? Is it something that, you know what I mean? So when she said that, I was like, wow, that's really good. I
That
gotta
is.
write that down, because I don't want to forget that,
Yeah.
So it's just all this stuff right now. It's helping me, because it's something that I'm dealing with right now. It's thoughts,
Yeah.
and again, the thoughts I adopted from the past,
Right.
they keep coming up. And that's something I think that affects even now, we're working on with us even,
Right.
because a lot of the times those thoughts want to come up, or I'm always having to ask myself, what are you thinking right now? Is it going to really help you? Is it going to affect, is it going to make things
Yeah.
worse? So, and that's what I'm doing right now, is learning to just be quiet, listen, be patient, and really think about what I'm even thinking about, like, is this really going to help me, or is it going to affect me? And because I know sometimes your thoughts too can affect how you function throughout the day. Some people, like for me, it's easy for me to shut down and just go to my room, shut the door, and take a nap.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes how I deal. I'm being honest. That's how I deal with my thoughts at that moment. I just shut down, and I don't want to think about it. So that's the way I shut my brain down. But it's learning to deal with it while I'm awake,
Yeah.
so that I can, take it from the root.
Yeah.
And be able to live my life in peace and joy,
And I can't
okay.
speak for everybody, but 9 times out of 10, like when we're having a disagreement and I walk away, my thought is I'm doing damage control.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want, I'm not trying to create it or make it worse, but at the same time, it does need to be something that needs to be talked about, because we do go back and resolve it, but it shouldn't be indefinitely.
Right.
Meaning
Right.
a day, 2, 3,
No,
week
yeah.
goes by,
Yeah.
because then you're using that for your advantage for whatever reason. So even the Bible says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind, to turn around and try to resolve it. If it's something towards the end of the day, you don't have too much time, still consider trying to resolve it. If you actually have to sleep on it for some reason, then try to resolve it first thing in the morning, so it doesn't linger and become this bigger situation. Because most of the time, when you go back and look at what the disagreement was, it's
so
super
small.
small
It's so
and
small.
dumb.
Yeah.
But we give it so much power because pride kicks in and everything
Yeah.
else.
But both people, like if you're a couple, you both need to come together and agree that that's what you're going to do.
That one's gonna walk away, yeah.
Don't just walk away on your other half
yeah.
if you know you haven't talked about it prior before.
Actually, in any relationship.
In any
Yeah.
relationship,
Or-
yeah, because it's just no, you know.
Or even just vocalize in the moment, like, hey, I'm going to walk away.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say something I'm going to regret.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because I
exactly.
think the difference is like, yeah, Dad, you'll walk away, but Mom, you'll filter through as you're talking. And you're like, I didn't mean to say it like that. But you can't sometimes.
Thinking out loud.
Yeah, and it sounds sad.
Women, the
It
power.
sounds sad. But like, if you say something super hurtful, even if you apologize, it's forever going to be, sometimes it's forever cemented in that person's brain.
Yeah.
Right? And it's hard for them to get rid of it, even if you apologize,
Yeah.
because it hurt them so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always better to just keep your mouth shut. Because like how we always talk about like the power of your words.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a thought and you vocalize it, you just gave life to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
That's
you
okay.
just said something though about the power of the words, okay? And this is not like a debate or anything like this or going on what you're saying, but real quick, power of your words. And I think too is how you articulate your words to another person makes a difference because you have to really guard and think about what you say before you say it because your words could be hurtful and you might not, you could even be downplaying someone's mind by the words you say for, you know, like
Yeah.
sometimes there's times I feel like I'm being talked to as if I'm a child
Yeah.
and I'm not, and I'm an adult, you know what I mean? So little things like that. So
Yeah.
when you have a conversation, even with your spouse or your friend or whatever, really think about what you say. And like you said, it's true. Sometimes I don't think about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And sometimes things, you know, do come out really rough. And sometimes they could be rude, you know, because I'm just straightforward. And I think more with my family. But inside, I'm
Well, it's
thinking...
those who you're comfortable
Yeah,
with.
and,
That's what we
inside
tend
of
to
me,
do.
I don't think I'm saying anything wrong, but it's not until that other person acknowledges or tells me or brings it to my attention that I'm saying something that was hurtful
But
or
do you think
rude.
it goes both ways? Because someone could say something super sweet or super like well thought out and the person get offended.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're already like have their guard up. So
Yeah.
no matter what you say, they're going to take it as like, you hate me, you're talking down to me, but they're not.
Yeah.
So I feel like it goes both ways.
Yeah, no, that's
You know
true.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, as we wrap it up, we just brought the discussion up. There's no right or wrong answer. It's what you do with this information that's going to determine, you know, good or bad fruit that's going to be seen on the tree of your life. So the outcome, I think, is something that we need to look at with our emotions. If we could choose to look at the outcome before we take a step in that direction, I think we'll make better choices. So look at the outcome before you say what you're going to say or you handle your emotions or feelings the way that you are. And so that you can bear good fruit and so that your relationships, all of them, marriage, family, friends, co-workers, all of them could be in a healthy place if we could turn around and manage our emotions and our feelings and choose to gather the facts. Go seek somebody who's been there and done that successfully, not just been there, because sometimes that's not enough. We want to turn around and hit what do you call it? Conquer these things in our areas of our lives to make us better.
Right.
Thank you again for joining us for this week's episode.